Thank you. Okay, so chapter 39, verse 3, what does it mean that Potiphar sees that Hashem is with Yosef? Ramban Pasuk Gimel, Ki Hashem ito, Shem Shemayim Shagar B'fiv. So he starts off by citing Rashi. Rashi says, you know what, Potiphar knows that God is with Yosef because Yosef's always talking about God. That's what happens. Yosef's talking about God. Ve'eno nira. Ramban says, I don't think that's the pshat. Avavayara adonav ki Hashem ito. Potiphar sees that God is with him. Ki yatzlichu ma'asov b'chol eis yoser mikol adam. Yosef was extraordinarily successful. V'yada me'es elokim hu lo. It's just obvious. You know, whether or not Potiphar understands Yosef's theology, there's no other way to explain it that there's some higher being that's helping him because he's remarkably successful. V'chein ra'o ra'inu ki haya Hashem imach. I think it's when a covenant is made with Yitzchak. So his neighbors say, we see that God is with you. How do they see that God is with him? Ramban says, again, the point is they see he's very successful. It must be his God. Since he sees that he's so successful and he likes him, he gives him disappointment. Okay. There's a medrash over here. Amru malachish v'nichnas malachish v'yotze. That Yosef would regularly be saying things, saying prayers, things like that. Amr lo mzog roschin v'roschin mzog poshrin v'poshrin. Ma Yosef tavim b'Ephraim charashim Mitzrayim ad hechan asher ashchino meras al gabav hadu d'chsiv v'yara adunav ki Hashem b'to. So Medrash says that it's like whenever he would ask Yosef to do something, Yosef would like say some prayer and it would just happen. That's what the Medrash says. That's how he says that he saw that God was with him. What does that Medrash mean? Ramban says, "Vo'inyan ki bavura Yosef of Mitzri lo yadas Hashem." Potiphar is an Egyptian. He doesn't have a connection to God. Amru ki biroso hatzlachaso hagadola. When he saw that Yosef was so remarkably successful, hayachoshesh, he became concerned. Ki derech shafimu kasher b'bnei artso. Potiphar's only source of reference for how a person could be remarkably successful was there must be magic, some kind of wizardry. As we know from the Egypt story, there were wizards and things. Until it got to the point, so Potiphar began to suspect Yosef of wizardry. And so then he had some type of dream, and God made it very clear that he's helping Yosef. All interesting stuff. But so the Rashi says that Yosef spoke about Hashem all the time. Ramban says the basic pshat is that he just was remarkably successful, and how else could he be so successful? But then there's this interesting nuance with the Medrash that the Ramban explains that Potiphar had suspicions that there was something weird going on with Yosef. So there was some kind of divine revelation to Potiphar. Okay. Verse 6. Vayazov kol asher lo biad Yosef. Potiphar left everything that he had in Yosef's hand. V'lo yodai toma uma. And literally, he didn't know with him anything, which basically seems to be he didn't keep track of anything that Yosef was or wasn't doing. Ki im alechem asher hu ochel, except for the bread which he ate. And then we end off by Yosef. Yosef was a very attractive, handsome person. And this, of course, is going to be the prelude to where the wife of Potiphar makes an advance towards Yosef. What does this mean? Potiphar didn't do anything with him, didn't stop him from anything except for the bread which he ate. So Yosef could do whatever he wanted in Potiphar's house, but he had to stay away from the cabinet with bread inside of it. What does that mean? So Ramban on Pasuk Vav, Ki im alechem asher hu ochel, lashon nekiya k'divrei Rabbeinu. So first of all, the Medrash says this is euphemistic for his wife. In other words, that it's a euphemism, and it just means that the only thing that Potiphar would mind that Yosef would take in his home is if he were to take his wife from him. That's the Medrash. Rabbi Avram Amar. Kol shelo haybiad Yosef chutz ben alechem asher hu ochel shlo haya afilu nogea bo ba'avur heyoso ivri. The Ibn Ezra says the pshat. No, it's literal. Yosef was not to touch Potiphar's bread because he was a Jew. Kikeno yemishpat hamitzrim eso ivrim shlo yigu b'ma'achalam. It was understood that the Jews were not to touch the Egyptians' bread. Ki toeva hi limitzrayim. It was considered disgusting to the Egyptians that the Jews should touch their bread. So it's very literal, says the Ibn Ezra. That Potiphar had great faith for him. It kind of is reminiscent when you think about homes from the earlier part of the 1900s, or maybe not so early in the 1900s, but like, African Americans within the home. You could have specific homes that had tremendous trust, but still there were certain barriers that couldn't be crossed. It's kind of reminiscent. Oye Perish Akasov ki lo yoda adonav es Yosef mu'uma shigikach mikol asher lo rak es halechem levado asher yochal Yosef lo l'shar hanos kasher yasu abachurim lo lesof lo osher nechasim. Totally different shot. Ramban says it might mean that the only thing that Potiphar was aware that Yosef took for himself was bread. In other words, it will be a very regular thing that if people have someone in their home who's always in the home, especially if they're trusted, they could take advantage of it. They could, use this and use that and use the family car and et cetera, et cetera. All Yosef did was eat basic food. So it could be a euphemism for his wife. It could be that Yosef wasn't allowed to touch Potiphar's bread because of Egyptian practices. Or it could be that the only thing Yosef ever took for himself was basic food. Okay, let's move on to verse 12. The wife of Potiphar makes an advance towards Yosef. It seems she's been trying to express her interest in different ways, and Yosef has always rebuffed her. And there came a given day where there was no one home besides the two of them. And now in verse 12, she grabbed him by his clothing to say, lie with me. He left his garment in her hand. Vayanas, and he fled. And he went out. Just a very technical point. Why does it say he fled and he went out? Why do you need both of those verbs? Couldn't you just say he fled outside? Or if you don't want to talk about fleeing, just say he went outside. So let's see the Ramban. Ramban on Pasuk Beis, Vayazov bigdo biyada. And why did he leave his garment in her hand? So she kind of grabs his garment and he left it in her hands and he ran away. Says the Ramban, Lichbod gevirto lo ratza lo tzio miyado b'kocho agaro b'mena. I mean, just sort of try to think about the scene. Why doesn't he just grab his shirt back or whatever garment it was? Is she stronger than him? So Ramban says he didn't want to get into. Of course, he could have, but he didn't think that was respectful to her. I mean, she's the lady of the house. He didn't think that was respectful. The Hasir oso me'alav, and he. So as she's grabbing, he kind of just removes it from him so that she could just keep it. She's atefbo. So Ramban says it was like a robe type of thing. So something that you could kind of easily, kind of pull off. A very interesting perspective from the Ramban. When she sees that he left the garment in her hands, she got scared. Why is she scared? Maybe he's going to reveal the fact that she made an advance on him. Maybe she's going to tell other members of the household. Maybe he's going to tell, other members of the household. Maybe he's going to tell her husband. And the ultimate proof that she made an advance towards him is why in the world is his robe in her room? That, says the Ramban, is why she started speaking about him. She actually would have been happy to not say a word about this. I think the way you normally understand the story is she felt spurned by him. So she's going to take revenge. Says the Ramban, that's not the pshat. She's scared that he's going to tell Potiphar or somebody else that she was making advances. And there's a little bit of proof. So she has to preempt him. So she tells everybody, oh yeah, you want to sleep with me. And when he heard that I was shouting, that's when he ran away. That time, Vayikir Birosa Kiozav Bigdo. I just want to jump over to the psukim for a moment. So we read verse 12. Now look at verse 13. When she saw that he left his garment in her hand, and he fled. Then verse 14, she called to the members of her household. And she said to them, look, this guy tried to have relations with me. Why in the world is verse 13 in between? Says the Ramban, because she would have been happy to keep it all quiet. But the fact that his garment was now left in her room makes it complicated for her now. Maybe he's going to reveal to everybody what's going on. So she needs to have her own narrative before he starts talking. Okay. So that's what the Ramban says. Now I want to see the Sforno on Pasuk Beis. Vayanas min hacheder pen yikbar lav yitzahara. So if you remember, I mentioned why does it have two verbs in the pasuk? He fled and he went out. So first of all, says the Sforno, he fled from that room because he was concerned that he would be overcome by his evil inclination. And this is an important backdrop to the story. Many Mepharshim discussed this. He was very tempted by her. And so he needed to, there's a very famous mention, I'm sure many of you have heard it, that he was going to succumb to her overtures, and then he saw an image of his father. So he ran out of the room because he didn't want to give it another moment, because he was worried what he would do. And he went outside. Once he gets out of the room, he wasn't running anymore. He was walking in a very normal way. The best way to make people think you're guilty of something is to be dashing down the street. Why is this guy dashing down the street? The Sforno says that it's really interesting. Look at this in verse 13. So when she sees that he left his garment in her hand and he fled outside, that's not what it said in verse 12. In verse 12, it said, and he fled and he went outside. Says the Sforno, once he got outside, he was walking very calmly. But she was worried that wasn't the case. She was worried that the same way that he fled out of the room, he fled outside. And so then that would attract attention. So according to the Ramban, she had to come up with her own narrative because he left the garment with her. According to Sforno, she had to come up with her own narrative because she thought maybe he's dashing like a madman outside, and everyone's going to start asking him what's going on. So just an interesting part of the story that I don't know about any of you I hadn't thought about before. Okay, we discussed this morning Rashi, the Ibn Ezra, and the Ramban. No, sorry, Rashi and the Ramban as to what does it mean that his master saw that God was with him. We discussed what does it mean with Rashi, the Ibn Ezra, and the Ramban. What's this thing about everything was left alone from him except for the bread that he ate? And then we discussed the Ramban and the Sforno as to what exactly transpired to compel the wife of Potiphar to begin spreading her own narrative.